Ministry porn? Let's talk about that next on the Metal Pulpit. Thanks for joining me for another Metal Pulpit. And yeah, ministry porn, okay? Ministry pornography. Let's talk about that for a little bit. Now, pornography, we know it's bad, we know it's not good, takes you to places you shouldn't be, it's addicting, just all sorts of bad things come from it. So what in the world am I talking about when it comes to ministry porn? Well, it's certainly not the missionary position, okay? Ministry porn is based on the fact that, according to sharefaith.com, there are over 30 church growth conferences that are going to happen this year, 2017, across our nation. Now, let me backtrack a little bit. In 1995, I recall vividly when the Brownsville revival broke out. Now, there were some good things going on there, some bad things going on down there, and I was quite aware of it because I had relatives, I had friends, I was in the denomination that birthed out of, and they would go down to those revival meetings and come back and try to replicate what was going on at those meetings at their own church. Now, here's the deal. I know John Kilpatrick. I knew Lindell Cooley. I knew Steve Hill. Steve Hill was a friend of my youth pastor growing up, and he oftentimes spoke at our youth group. Now, a little bit after that all happened, and Richard Crisco, the youth pastor, they all spoke at a little conference that I went to. And they said this at the very end of it. Before we pray for somebody, please don't come up and start barking like a dog and acting weird. That is not what we're all about. You see, churches are so hungry. Christianity is so hungry for the next big thing and a quick fix that they latch onto anything. So we had people going down to the Brownsville revival by the droves, or church buses, and would come back and try to replicate this thing at their own church, and failed miserably. Okay, the same thing goes on for what? The church ministry conferences. I was looking at them, and I used to go to quite a few of these. There were some good ones down in Indiana that I thought were good. When I was a youth pastor, I'd go to ones in Rockford, Illinois, and Macon, Georgia, and a couple others. And, you know, I gotta say, there were some good things about it, some good principles, but quite honestly, I've given up on them. I can't remember the last time I went to a actual church conference and where thousands of people would show up. You'd pay hundreds of dollars, you'd get a few trinkety things, and then you'd go back and you'd have to, debrief with your staff and leadership. And this is what we're going to do. This is what he said worked for him. This is the pre-made message that I bought for our church. This is a sermon series that I saw worked really good, and on it goes. And it doesn't work. It's because God created each church to be unique. And when we start copying one another, it never works out well. So it literally becomes a pastor or staff going from church conference to church conference to church conference, looking for that next thing that they will never have, porn, and try to replicate it and somehow make this thing work, when in the end it's destroying them. They're setting themselves up for a big fall because they will never act like or be like that big church that they went to and saw in action. Why? Because at church conferences, they roll out the A-team. They bring out the best artists. They bring out all their greeters. If you're on the business end of the church conference, there's something very romantic and very cool about being a part of something like that. So of course you're going to volunteer. It's huge. It's at your church. There's big name speakers coming. Who wouldn't want to volunteer for that if you're attending that church? So church conferences, forget it. It's something that's not really... I'm looking back on my time as a pastor, and even now, there are things that I tried, and quite honestly, it wasn't unique, wasn't working for the area, and so I wasted my money. And it's something worth considering. When you are looking for the next big thing in your church, how about this? Pray. Serve. Get involved in your community, and you'll see some really cool things happen. Okay, viewer question. So my friend Chris sends a message and says, can you talk some about cliques in church? Yes, I can. Okay, cliques in church. They're going to happen. Let's go back to the ministry porn thing. One of the big things going back in the 90s and 2000s were small groups, doing life together. I just can't do that phrase, doing life together. So what we would do is pastors would say, you are going to be a small group, meet, share your deepest, darkest secrets, be vulnerable with one another, and go. That was my response sitting in on some of these meetings. I was a staff pastor when this was going on, and I'd show up at my small group, partly because I had to go to it because I was on staff, and I just sat there and, nope, I am not sharing a thing about my past with these people because we have no rapport. That person I don't trust. That person I wouldn't tell anything to, and that person doesn't know me well enough, and I don't know them well enough, so I'm going to just keep it zipped. And so we'd have these small groups. They're surfacey. How you doing? We're good. I have an unspoken prayer request, and on, and that was small groups. That's how churches still roll today. If you're around each other for a long time, then we start opening up more and more and more until we get judged. Then we dial it back. Then we dial it back a little more. But we don't want to let too much out. I had a friend that said she was at her women's ministry get-together, and they were around the table saying, what are you reading right now? Everybody was, Beth Moore, Joyce Meyer, Paula White, and she said J.K. Rowling. I thought that was awesome, being that open. And she was excommunicated from the group. You see, cliques, I think, personally, are a healthy thing in the church. So we try to form these small groups and force them, when in fact, hey, there's this moms group that's starting to form over here. More and more moms are having... they have babies, and these young couples are having babies in the church, and they're starting to form this group, but for some reason they're not inviting Sister Papufnik in, and, well, she's kind of angry about that. No, it was an organic group that grew, and out of it became a small group. Of course they're not going to invite Sister Papufnik to it because, quite honestly, she doesn't have any kids, or she's an empty nester, or whatever, and they just like to have their group. This group over here, cancer survivors. I've never had cancer. I don't know what they're going through, but they are a tight-knit group, and they're meeting together and doing some cool things. This group here is another way. This group here, senior guys, retired, they just want to shoot the breeze. You know what? They probably don't want some 20-year-old hipster in there talking to them about how rough they have it, when in fact they've just retired from the union and have the battle wounds to show it. And so what happens is these organic things start growing in the church, and these cliques start happening, and pastors and boards are start saying, you aren't letting sister so-and-so in, you're not letting brother so-and-so in, you are not going to meet, and we snuff them out, and we're back to a shallow, small cell group doing life together, okay? Now, I do think there's a problem with some of the cliques where if they get a holier-than-thou attitude, or they start ripping on the church that they're part of, or they start excommunicating people, or just being rude, I think that needs to be addressed. But I think a clique that's naturally grown in the church, I think it's natural, I think it's okay, and I think discipleship happens within those groups. Hey, shoot me your questions right here, PastorBobAdams@gmail.com. Leave a comment here on the YouTube channel, and I look forward to talking with you again next week here on the Metal Pulpit.